The first thing they noticed about the new janitor was how quiet he was. Didn't talk unless spoken to. Didn't wear cologne. Didn't even bring a phone. Just showed up with a plain navy uniform, a small duffel bag, and a hard stare that made the younger faculty avoid eye contact. "He's just temporary," Principal Caldwell said. "City sent him through a new night staff program," Sister Ruth added. "He passed all the background checks." They didn't ask questions. No one ever asked enough questions at St. Agnes. Malachi kept his head down as he swept the mosaic-tiled halls. The very same halls his sister once walked, back when she wore her cornrows in tight braids and carried a blue leather journal she never let out of her sight. He passed her old dorm wing every night at 2:03 never touched the door? Not yet. He waited. Waited until the rhythm of the school pulsed in his bones, when he knew who snuck out for snacks, which nun prayed loudest, and which camera blinked red but didn't actually record. Then, on the 6th night, he made his move. The records room was supposed to be locked at all times. Sister Antoinette said it held delicate histories, transcripts, parish donations, disciplinary files. A fire in 2005 destroyed most of it, allegedly. But Malachi knew that fire had been started deliberately. He also knew the smoke didn't touch the sub-basement archives. He pulled out the skeleton key he'd carved himself, not from wood, from memory. The click echoed in the stone corridor like a gunshot. He slipped inside. Dust floated like ghosts in the beam of his flashlight. Shelves sagged with folders, broken boxes, and names written in smudged marker. He wasn't looking for files. He was looking for what Tiana had hidden. Tucked behind a loose brick undershelf, RS, he found it, wrapped in faded cloth, smelling like cedar and faint perfume. Her journal. The bell tower chimed once 3 Amen. Malachi sat alone in the furnace room, flipping pages with gloved hands. October 14th, 2001. He told me if I told anyone, I'd disappear like Chelsea. I didn't believe him, but now I do. The nuns are afraid of him. They let him lock me in that tiny room again. I scratched the wall this time. If someone finds it, maybe they'll know I was real. I want Malachi to know. I didn't leave him. I would never leave him. He stopped breathing. The air thickened around him like wet cement. He remembered the police telling him she ran away, that she was troubled, that she'd been seen boarding a bus to Savannah. He was 13 when they said that. He'd believed them for a minute. Then he saw her bedroom, untouched. Her shoes still lined up under the bed. She never ran. She was taken. And now he knew where to start looking. The journal pages had clues. One name scratched into the corner margin. A classroom she mentioned more than once. A storage room she'd called the punishment place. Malachi stood up, tucked the journal beneath his uniform, and walked back into the night-lit halls of St. Agnes. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a brother. And someone at this school owed him a body. At 317A, long after the last light had flickered out and the nuns were fast asleep, the new janitor at St. Agnes quietly unlocked a door that hadn't creaked open in 20 years. He knew what he was looking for, and this time he wouldn't leave without it. In 2001, a 15-year-old girl named Tiana Fletcher vanished from a prestigious Catholic school in Charleston, South Carolina. Her disappearance was brushed aside, ruled a runaway, despite whispers of faculty misconduct and secret dorm punishments. 23 years later, her brother Malachi Fletcher, now a quiet and stoic man in his 40s, returns to the same school not as a visitor, but as the newly hired night janitor. He's got a key, a false name, and 2 decades of rage buried under silence. The truth about his sister was never found in the police files, but it still haunts the hallways of St. Agnes. Before we expose the secrets buried in this case, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because in this world of lies, betrayal, and missing files. One click might be your only way to the truth. Now, let's begin. By the time the sun rose over Charleston, casting amber light across the iron gates of St. Agnes, Malachi had already scrubbed and mopped every hallway twice. Not because they were dirty, because it gave him cover. He was always moving, always watching. The teachers passed him without a second glance, distracted by morning coffee and schedule changes. The students, mostly quiet girls in blazers and stiff shoes, barely acknowledged the cleaning man. That's exactly what he needed. Invisible hands, open ears, and the freedom to move between places no one else noticed. By 4 p.m., after the last bell rang and most of the girls were gone, he slipped into the east wing, the old dormitory. It had been shut down after the expansion, now used only for storage and overflow, whatever that meant. But Malachi remembered every inch of it. He and Tiana used to wait there after chapel on Wednesdays, passing a single Walkman between them, listening to Lauryn Hill in one ear each. He found the hallway quiet, musty, and untouched. Third door from the end. Faint scratch marks near the knob. Tiana's old room. The same room she'd written about in her journal. He knelt and ran a gloved hand along the baseboard, flashlight steady. Then he saw 5 scratch marks etched into the drywall, just beneath the bed frame support beam. He whispered under his breath. She was trying to count. Not days. Times. 5 times they locked her in here. He reached for his pocket and pulled out a small blacklight pen. It wasn't school-issued. It was something he picked up while working part-time at a private security firm back in Charlotte. He clicked the light on, and there it was. Invisible ink. He has a key to the green room. And I heard him say my name after chapel. Green room? Malachi stood up slowly, pulse quickening. St. Agnes didn't have a theater. There was only one room ever called the Green Room, back when he was a kid, and it wasn't painted green. It was a nickname. A place they weren't allowed to go. A storage closet behind the old organ in the church chapel, covered by a curtain. It used to be the confessional room before renovations. Now, it was just forgotten. At least to everyone but Malachi. That night, after the security lights blinked into night mode and the church staff cleared out, Malachi waited in the janitor's office with the lights off. He'd timed the patrol. One security guard, mid-50s, diabetic, usually asleep by 1:30 a.m. By 2:06, Malachi was in the chapel, crouching near the altar. The old organ stood like a crooked spine against the back wall. Behind it, a velvet curtain, ripped and mildewed at the bottom. He slipped behind it. The wood door was still there. The lock had been replaced, but Malachi wasn't just guessing anymore. He'd brought tools. 3 minutes and a silent twist of a tension wrench later, he was inside. The green room was a cell. Smaller than he remembered. No windows. One rusted chair. Peeling green paint that gave the nickname meaning. An old rosary on the floor. And on the wall etched into the drywall with what looked like a bobby pin Tiana's handwriting. He knelt closer, flashlight angled. I think they're going to make me disappear like Chelsea. I don't want to die here. Malachi, if you ever come back, tell Mama I didn't lie. Tell her I fought. He covered his mouth with one hand, breath trembling. Chelsea, the same name from the journal. He remembered Chelsea Rawls' junior class. Quiet, vanished in 1998. That case had disappeared just as fast. The school had claimed she transferred. Her parents were told she went off the grid after a fight at home. Now 2 names were linked. 2 girls who went missing. Same dorm, same time, same priest, Father Bellamy. The man who oversaw discipline, chapel attendance, and spiritual development, still employed. Still smiling from the front pew every morning mass. Malachi had seen him 3 times already. Older now, slightly hunched, but still dangerous. As he stood to leave the green room, He caught something strange in the corner, a trapdoor covered by a rug. He froze. It hadn't been there before. He knelt and lifted it gently. The hinges creaked, dry and stiff. A ladder dropped into darkness. He lowered the flashlight. Brick walls, dirt floor, a hidden crawl space, and a smell faint but undeniable. Old perfume. And something else. Decay. He shut it. Not yet. He wasn't ready. Not without a camera. Not without proof. By 4:30 a.m., Malachi was back in the boiler room, washing his hands and rereading the page he'd torn from the wall. He knew what came next. This wasn't just about Tiana anymore. It wasn't even just about St. Agnes. It was about a system that decided which black girls mattered, which ones were believed, and which ones they could make disappear. He folded the page, locked the journal in a false bottom compartment in his mop cart. Then he pulled out an envelope addressed in tight, neat handwriting. To a J. Monroe, private investigator, retired. Malachi whispered, "You still owe me one." He tucked the envelope into the outgoing mail bin just before the office staff arrived. And as the sun rose again over St. Agnes, the quiet janitor disappeared down the hallway, mop in hand, like nothing ever happened. The envelope made it to a J. Monroe's front porch by Wednesday. It was hand-delivered. No stamp, no return address. Just thick cardstock and one sentence written in tight, deliberate script. "You missed a girl in 2001. Come to Charleston." I found her voice. A.J. Monroe hadn't stepped foot in South Carolina since the case that broke him, the one that made him pack up his desk at the Charleston PD, file for early retirement, and drive west until the guilt stopped gnawing at his gut. It never did. He'd spent 2 decades sipping bad coffee on back porches in Savannah, consulting on missing persons when the guilt got too loud. But that note, those 9 words, dragged him back to the place he swore he'd never return. Tiana Fletcher. The case he'd been told to let go, the one the brass labeled a runaway. The one he knew, deep down, was different. He was a rookie detective then, fresh cut, still thought justice came with a badge and a clipboard. But St. Agnes had been a fortress and Tiana's family had been inconvenient. No lawyer, no media clout, just grief and silence. But now, someone was cracking open the walls. By Friday, Monroe stood outside the black wrought iron gates of St. Agnes, staring up at the Gothic tower that always made him feel small. He'd trimmed his beard, wore a plain brown overcoat, and leaned heavier on his cane than usual. His limp had gotten worse since retirement, but he still moved with purpose. Inside the gates, he saw him, the janitor, mop in hand, walking with military precision. Their eyes met. Neither man smiled. Malachi gave a slight nod and kept walking. Monroe slipped a folded piece of paper from his pocket and read the handwritten note again. Boiler room, 217A, M. Come alone. Bring gloves. That night, the boiler room felt colder than usual. Malachi stood in the shadows, his duffel bag resting against the wall. Monroe stepped inside, the door creaking behind him like a whisper of warning. "You grew up," Monroe said. "You forgot us," Malachi replied. Silence. Thick. "I didn't forget. They just made sure I couldn't look. You had a badge. You had access. I had orders." Malachi turned away, chest rising. She scratched messages into drywall. She left a map in her journal. There's a trapdoor beneath the chapel. Crawl space. He pulled out a Ziploc bag containing a page torn from the green room wall. "This isn't a ghost story, Monroe. They buried her." Monroe studied the page. His hands didn't shake, but something in his eyes did. "She said Chelsea was first," Malachi added. 1998. "I remember her. Rawls. Another transfer." Monroe's voice dropped. "And nobody ever saw a file." Because it never existed, just like the exit reports they forged. Monroe sighed. You think it's still down there? I think if it is, it'll be gone soon. Bellamy's on to me. He slowed his steps when he saw me in the chapel. I felt it. Monroe tucked the page into his coat. What do you need from me? Malachi finally looked at him. Authority, a witness, and someone who knows how to get this out if I don't make it. That night, they moved like shadows. At 3:02, a Monroe waited in the back pew of the chapel, silent as the moonlight that poured through the stained glass. Malachi opened the trapdoor with a crowbar, this time no more playing careful. The air below was damp and smelled of mildew, copper, and silence. They climbed down one at a time. The crawl space was narrow, just 5 feet wide, brick-lined with rotting wooden beams above. A single dangling light bulb flickered weakly overhead, revealing a tunnel stretching beyond their flashlight beams. I never saw this on the blueprints, Monroe whispered. Because it wasn't made for priests. It was made for hiding things. 10 feet in, they found it. A small cot, torn mattress, rusted chains bolted to the brick, old shoes in the corner child-sized, a tattered denim jacket, and beneath it, a rosary missing 3 beads. Monroe bent down, careful not to touch. His voice cracked. Chelsea's, Malachi nodded. I told you. They kept her here. There was a faint metallic glint under the cot. Monroe reached, pulled it out a small, corroded tape recorder. He pressed play. Static. And they say I lied. But I didn't. I saw what they did to Chelsea. I saw the green room. If someone hears this, please tell my brother I didn't leave him. Tiana's voice. Young, scared, brave. Monroe stood frozen. Malachi swallowed hard. There's your ghost, detective. By the time they surfaced, dawn was breaking. Monroe stepped out of the chapel with the tape recorder hidden beneath his coat and a copy of the scratch note sealed in his breast pocket. Malachi stayed back, watching from the shadows. He wasn't done yet. He still needed to get into the East Wing Records vault, the place where donations were tracked, where expulsion files were buried, and where he was sure Bellamy kept the missing pieces. But just as he turned the corner, he stopped. A figure stood in the hallway, black cassock, crooked smile, Father Bellamy. Well now, the priest said softly, hands folded. You've been very busy, Mr. Fletcher. Malachi didn't flinch, didn't speak. Bellamy's voice dropped. You've gone places you shouldn't go. That little room was sealed for a reason. Some things are best left buried, for everyone's sake. Malachi's jaw clenched. I'm not here for everyone, he said. Just her. Bellamy stepped closer. You're not the first brother who's come looking. Malachi's eyes narrowed. Maybe not, but I'll be the last. And without another word, he turned his back on the priest and walked away. But he felt it. A new game had started. And Bellamy? He didn't bluff. Malachi didn't go back to the janitor's closet that night. He didn't sweep the halls, didn't empty the trash bins, didn't even bother with the cameras. He already knew which ones worked and which ones blinked dead red eyes. Instead, he waited. Waited for the halls to go still. Waited for the bells to toll midnight. Waited for Father Bellamy to make his final rounds. He'd studied the man's routine like a blueprint. 12:15 a.m., chapel prayer. 12:25, walk through the West Wing. 12:32, enter his office. 12:39, exit with the same empty hands. Every night. Except this time, Malachi was already inside. The East Wing was locked with a new digital pad installed just 2 weeks ago. But Malachi wasn't improvising anymore. He had help. Earlier that day, Monroe had dropped a flash drive into his mop cart. No words exchanged, no nods. Just an understanding between 2 men who had both failed a girl. The drive held old-school schematics, blueprints, and one entry code written in red ink, 1968, the year Bellamy first came to St. Agnes. Click. The door opened. The east wing smelled different, like varnish, paper, and slow bleeding secrets. Malachi slipped in, careful not to trigger the motion sensor near the fire extinguisher. He stepped into the old records vault, a long hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling cabinets, stacked high with financial ledgers, alumni files, donation receipts, and expulsion records. Most incomplete. He moved fast. Middle cabinet, third drawer. Behind the false back. Just like Tiana had written. Inside, a sealed brown folder labeled in pencil. C. Rawls, room 3 incident closed, no signature. No seal. No timestamp. And beneath that, another. Fletcher T. Potential transfer. Behavioral risk. Malachi's hands trembled. The files were thin, redacted, but he saw the truth in what was missing. Tiana was never transferred. She was silenced. Just like Chelsea. At the bottom of the drawer, something heavy. A steel key with a red tape strip around the handle. Taped beneath it, a note. Vault Room B, only open with senior chaplain present. Vault Room B. He knew where that was. Behind Bellamy's office. The old confession hall, now used as a private archive. Malachi took the key, tucked the files inside his duffel, and walked straight into the lion's mouth. Father Bellamy's office was lit by candlelight. The door was cracked. Malachi stepped inside, slow. The priest stood facing the stained glass window, sipping from a gold chalice. "You made it further than most," Bellamy said, his voice almost admiring. "You made too many girls disappear." Bellamy turned, eyes hard but tired. "You think this place is evil. You think I am. But we were preserving the order. Do you know what Chelsea was doing? What Tiana threatened to expose? They were teenagers," Malachi snapped. "Children. They were disruption," Bellamy hissed. "They challenged the chain. Chelsea found the ledger. Tiana read it." "What ledger?" Bellamy walked to a hidden panel in the wall and pushed. A cabinet opened. Inside, a massive black book with a torn leather spine. He placed it on the desk. "This," he said, "is what you came for." Malachi opened it slowly. Inside, names, dates, amounts, payoffs, transfers. Dozens of donation entries tied to silence. $15,000 Fletcher T. Family payout. $22,000 Rawls C. Transfer settlement. Monroe had been right. The silence had been bought, and the families never knew. He didn't need to ask what happened next. He knew. Bellamy leaned over the desk. "You expose this. You destroy a 100-year institution. You burn a legacy. And for what? Justice for 2 dead girls who won't come back?" Malachi stared at him. "No," he said. "For my mother. For the sleepless nights. For every child who'll never walk these halls again." He pulled out his phone and hit send. 3 things happened in the next hour. First, Monroe, waiting in the car outside, received the full folder of audio, photos, and digital scans of the ledger. Second, the fire alarm triggered in the chapel. And third, Father Bellamy, attempting to flee the grounds, was intercepted by 2 uniformed officers with a warrant signed just that morning. Malachi stood on the chapel steps, arms folded. For the first time in 23 years, he exhaled. 6 weeks later, the story broke nationally. Charleston Catholic School under investigation after expose uncovers decades of cover-ups. Photos of Chelsea Rawls and Tiana Fletcher were broadcast on every screen. Their names no longer rumors, now remembered. Monroe testified. Bellamy was indicted. 3 other former staff members were named in the inquiry. St. Agnes suspended operations pending the investigation. And Malachi? He quit, took the mop cart, the keys, and walked away without a word. but he left something in the boiler room. Tiana's journal wrapped in velvet, placed in a sealed box labeled Property of the Fletcher Family. On the front page, a note. You weren't a rumor. You weren't a runaway. You were my sister, and now they remember you.